Well, we are in a series right now, practicing our mission. We're getting towards the end, where we're talking about what it means to follow Jesus. Really, what does it mean to love God and love others and make disciples in our world today? To take seriously the situation in which we find ourselves and the way that the world is shaping us, the way our society is forming us, and to ask the question, what practices might we engage in so that we can be transformed into the likeness of Christ? So we've been talking about a number of practices over the last few weeks. Today, I want to start this sermon with telling you what the practice is that we're going to be talking about today, but then living into in the months and years to come. So here is our practice for today. In a world prone to fear and anxiety, following Jesus means inviting others to experience peace and wholeness. So I'm talking about fear and anxiety today. And I will tell you, this week has been hard thinking about this sermon because I've been very anxious about making people anxious about how anxious we are. And I say that to get a chuckle to alleviate my anxiety. So, but in all seriousness, I've been very prayerful and trying to be very thoughtful about today. This is a serious topic. I'm so anxious, my voice is cracking. So to begin today, I want to define, fear and anxiety. And it would define what it means. And so, very succinctly, this is how we define fear and anxiety. This is from the Diagnostic Manual of Psychiatry. I did some digging this week, okay? But this is how they define fear and anxiety. Fear is the emotional response to real or perceived imminent threat, whereas anxiety is anticipation of future threat. Okay, so I start off by reading that definition because I want us to understand that fear and anxiety are not bad in of themselves, actually. And in fact, fear can be helpful to us as humans. It helps us avoid danger. I thought about this a lot this week, actually, because Ann and Dax and I think Meg was working. We watched a show this week. I don't know if you've seen it, but David Blaine, the magician, and whatever else you would call him, who does all these crazy daredevil things. David Blaine's a magician who has put himself underwater like Houdini, locked up, and all those kinds of things. He has a new show called Do Not Attempt. Good advice. Do not attempt what's going on in the show. But we watched an episode of it because there's 2 episodes out, and the second episode was set in Southeast Asia, in Thailand and Indonesia. That could be interesting to see Thailand. So we watched it, and oh my goodness. The whole point of the show is he goes around and interacts with people who do things that really nobody else would do. And then he picks one thing that he has seen and says, I'm going to do that. And then he gets ready to do it. For example, he saw a guy take a box of nails and swallow them. Yeah, I don't know what's going on anymore in the world, right? But so he's watching this. Well, in this episode, he meets a guy who is a snake handler. And this guy is well known for his connection with King Cobra. And so he watches this guy interact with the king cobra, and this snake handler from Indonesia, at one point, this king cobra is up, they can stand 3 feet off the ground, their head. And this snake handler bends over and kisses the top of the snake's head. And David Blaine goes, I want to do that. So I'm like, sure. So the rest of the episode is him training to be able to kiss the head of a king cobra. So they find another king cobra, and they're back in Thailand, and it's a 13-foot king cobra. And he starts going through the training of trying to just kind of get near the snake first, and there's a little dance he has to do. And he's talking about getting ready for the day that's coming in a few weeks, like 3 weeks, I can't remember, where he's going to try to kiss this king cobra. And he says how there are moments when he's right there in front of the snake and he's trying to get close, that when that snake moves, his heart races and he jumps back. That's called fear, everybody, and that's a good thing. All right? But then he talks about how thinking about the approaching day, even when the snake's not around, just in other places, he says, my heart will race, and I start getting a little worked up thinking about, am I going to be able to do this when the day comes? Well, that's anxiety, anticipating a future threat. So in that regard, fear is not a bad thing. We should be a little afraid of king cobras in front of us. I'm actually reminded of when we gave Dax his snake for Christmas a few years ago. Yes, after all that, we do have a snake. And we bought a ball python. We brought the ball python home, Ivy. And I remember we had this snake, and Ivy was about this long, about the width of my thumb. But Ivy looked like a 13-foot king cobra to me. And so we brought Ivy home, and I remember we were all kind of like, what do we do now? We have to get this snake out. And Ann is like, I got it. And Ann, reaches in and grabs this snake. I'm like, and she's like, oh yeah, handling this snake. I'm like, wow. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, something startled Ivy, and Ivy went, like it was going to strike. And then went, and dropped Ivy and hit the ground. And I thought, Ann, what are you so afraid of? As I stood on the other side of the room. So fear is not a terrible thing, right? A little fear can do us some good. It keeps us from kissing the heads of king cobras. But the problem comes when we experience fear and anxiety at unhealthy levels. When the threats are constant. And I'll tell you, I think as a society today, as a world today, we breed fear and anxiety. We are literally capitalizing on it. Let me give you two examples. One about how I think fear is especially prominent today, and then anxiety. Two ways it's caused uniquely in our world today. First, fear. One of the ways, and there are lots of ways that we breed fear, but one of the ways is the way that we are consumed by the news. The way that news is coming at us all the time. Right? There's a threat around every corner. Have you noticed? We are constantly bombarded with imminent threats. Natural disasters, violence, economic woes, looming epidemics, and so on. So no wonder we're on edge. The 24-hour news, I'm pretty sure, was one of the worst things we came up with. Because everything is a potential danger to us. And everything is of the utmost importance. And so what happens then is whoever they might be, they are out to harm me. So then everything feels like an existential threat. We are not made to absorb this much news. Literally, our brains are not made to absorb this much news, especially when it's bad news that sells. I'll tell you, I am really glad that in God's new creation, there won't be CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News. Can I get an amen? Too much news. And anxiety. Well, lots of things. It's complex, lots of things that contribute to the rise of anxiety in our world. But here's one. Well, before I say the one, most of us, I'll say, in our context, we don't face potential physical danger consistently. Most of us, that's not what causes anxiety. But anxiety does not only come from physical threats, it also comes from social threats. In fact, this is where most of our anxiety comes from. When we anticipate threats to our social status or our self-worth, and we're bombarded by it. So I read a book recently. It's got a lot of press. A book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I both highly recommend this book and want to tell you, do not go near it. But mostly I say you should read it. But it is sobering to read. But what Jonathan Haidt is, his argument in this book, he's a social psychologist looking at our culture. And what his concern is the rapid increase in anxiety in our world, especially among younger people. And so he gives all kinds of statistics and data. And I will not give you all the statistics and data. But just to give you one, to show that this is not just, something we've always dealt with. There is something going on in the world today. Because the statistic he begins with says in 2008, 10% of college students were diagnosed with some level of anxiety disorder. 10% in 2008. By 2018, 24%. And there was a serious uptick and a rise that started around 2012, where levels of anxiety went up. And Jonathan Haidt's, what his main argument in this book is, and this is the part where I lose about half of you. This is what he says. The data spells it out. That the number one, he would argue, reason for the rise in anxiety in our world around this time is social media. And, thank you. I was waiting. Now here, I know I'm the wet blanket guy. Here he goes, dogging on social media. Yeah, I am. Okay, but I say this because it's serious, and because the data shows that our screens, and particularly social media, are making us more and more anxious. The social threats are constant because of social media. There is something unique going on, and we cannot ignore it. Now, Jonathan Haidt's book says a whole lot more, and I'm probably going to come back and reference it in the future. But that's enough for now, so that we're clear that this is something we have to take seriously. And we need to say a lot more about how we're prone to fear and anxiety. But for now, it's good enough for us to just name the reality. And then let's talk about how critical it is that the church responds. So let's respond. Let's invite people to experience peace and wholeness. Or the biblical word for this, the Hebrew word, shalom. Let's invite people to experience God's shalom. Now, here's the thing. There are lots of ways to do that. There are lots of ways that we can help invite others to experience peace and wholeness. Okay? One of those ways is we can help people, those in our church community and in the larger community, connect to resources that can help with mental and emotional well-being. So in fact, we're going to be very intentional about that. And so we're actually right now, Caleb Carroll is going to lead a team of people to spend the next few months exploring different ways churches are helping people in the community thrive mentally and emotionally, to connect to counseling and therapy or whatever else is needed. How are other churches doing this well, and how might we do that? So over the coming months, they're going to be prayerfully exploring and discovering ways that we might do that, and then come and bring a proposal to say, this is what we can do as a church. And there are other ways we're trying to take this seriously as leadership, elders, and staff. And over the past few months, we've been looking at how we respond pastorally to this congregation and trying to think how we can be better shepherds and pastors to this congregation. We've made some changes, and we're going to keep making changes, and I hope that you can feel that, so that we can be a place of peace for you in this congregation. So there are other ways that we can explore to invite others to experience peace and wholeness. There's a lot more we could do and say about responding to fear and anxiety. And we'll be saying more in the future. But here's what I want to say today, introducing this practice of ours. In a world already struggling with anxiety, some of the theology out there has made it to where God is another source of anxiety. And that's sad. Some of us have picked up along the way an image of a God who is a harsh judge, who's ready to smite us if we don't get things right, who's never quite pleased with us, or at least a God who keeps us uneasy about whether we are fully loved and redeemed. So God is another source of anxiety because God seems like a potential threat. Do you feel anything like that? Any of that resonates with you, that when you think of God and those feelings come up, come see me. I mean that seriously. Come see me. Because that is not who God is. Come see me and let's talk, because I want to tell you about the living God whose grace and love is beyond your imagination, who has taken away your shame and wants to hold your fear and anxiety for you and with you, who says to you, you are my beloved child in whom I delight. God, who wants you to have peace. So I'm struck in John's gospel how John does this interesting thing and how he records the end of Jesus' time. And I want to point out, or start with where Jesus gives this a long speech to his disciples. You get this long talk in chapters 14 through 17. There's a lot that Jesus packs in to those 4 chapters. But I want to point out something that shows up here. First, in the beginning of this talk, this is how he begins. This is and part of this is where he talks about the vine and the branches and the sending the Spirit who will come after him. And he begins with this line in chapter 14, verse 1. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. trust in God. You trust in God, trust also in me. Do not let your hearts be troubled. That's how he begins. And then later in chapter 14, Jesus says this in verse 27, peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. Then, chapter 16, verse 33, he says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. So Jesus talks about this peace. You will have trouble in this world, but you will find peace in me. I want to give you this shalom. And what's really interesting is after Jesus is resurrected, and Jesus then appears to the apostles, John records 3 different times where Jesus appears and says the same line. Peace be with you. Now, what strikes me here is that Jesus does not say, peace be with you, any other time in John's gospel. That's not how he greets people, usually, at least not how it's recorded. But when Jesus is resurrected, when Jesus has defeated death, now Jesus shows up. How does he greet someone? Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Encountering the God revealed in the resurrected Christ is a balm to our fear and anxiety. The resurrected Christ does not keep us wondering if we are enough. The resurrected Christ isn't telling us to prove ourselves. The resurrected Christ is the one who said, it is finished. He's the one who greets you by offering peace. We are all in need of peace. We have an opportunity to invite others to experience the peace and wholeness that comes in Christ. And so we are going to be a people, I pray, that finds ways and opportunities to invite others to experience God's shalom. But today, before we think about going out and inviting others, I am going to invite you to do 3 things that I think might contribute to a little more peace and wholeness in your life. All right? So I'm going to invite you to do 3 things. 2 of them are invitations to not do something, actually, and then 1 invitation to do something. Here's my first invitation to you. Stop watching the news. Okay, you can watch a little bit, all right? But here's my invitation, and I mean this seriously. Commit to not giving more than 30 minutes of your day to the news. No more than 30 minutes. Less, even better. And when I say 30 minutes at the most to news, I mean like the headlines and to know what's going on in the world, because that is important to know what's going on in the world. But to stop with all the pundits and the commentary and the rhetoric, shut it off. I'm going to invite you to spend 30 minutes or less with the news. See what happens. Try it for a while. Try it for the rest of your life. And here's the second invitation. You know what's coming. Get off social media. Now, here's the thing. I invite you, and it's just an invitation, but I invite you to get rid of it. Be done with it. But if you're not ready to do that, okay, baby steps, I get it. So maybe let's even just say, try it till Easter. Give it up till Easter. See what happens. I gave up social media, like posting and scrolling and all that kind of stuff. So I gave it up in 2013. You're like, has social media in 2013? But I gave it up in 2013, one of the best decisions I've ever made. So I'm going to invite you to get off social media. Because here's the thing. It is about our anxiety levels, but actually I think it's more than just about anxiety. If you think back to our other practices, think about how social media is countering what we're trying to do, right? In a world that is too busy and too noisy, where we go, and then we distract ourselves, right? Instead of being still and quiet in the presence of God. In a world that is always wanting more and newer and better, where do we get that desire from? In a world that is lonely and isolated, in a world that is divided, I just wonder how much more life would we have? And I get it. FOMO. All right, for those in my age or older, FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. It's a real thing. I don't want to miss out on the news or social media. I might miss out on something. Well, here's the news for you. You're already missing out. We're so consumed with those things, we're missing out on sunsets and walks and deep conversations, time of prayer. You're already missing out. That's my hard sell. I'm sorry, invitation. Just consider it. Carefully consider. Because I have a hunch you'll find life. Okay, and here's my third invitation to you today. My third invitation is for you to recognize that God delights in you. A few years ago, after we moved back from Thailand, we visited a church for a little while, and every Sunday, this church at some point in the worship would stop, and everybody would say together, I am, and they'd say their name, I am Darren Reese, in whom God dwells and delights. And that has stuck with us ever since then. And so my invitation to you this week, if you want to do it beyond this week, even better, but at least this week, every day, you began and ended your day by saying, I am Darren Reese, in whom God dwells and delights. Because we are all in need of peace and wholeness. But another way of saying that is we are all in need of encountering God who delights in us. And so as we end sermon today, I'm going to invite you to join me in saying this together. If you'll put it back up on the screen. Let's say this together. Put your name. Don't say Darren. Okay. All right. Let's say this together because God wants to give you peace. He wants you to know who you are. So say this with me. I am Darren Reese, in whom God dwells and delights. Let's stand and sing.